Hi, I'm Nathan, and this is your Money Matters Tip of the Week. I'm going to talk about 2 steps that can help you manage your money: categorizing and reducing. The first step is to categorize your spending. Take every expense you make and assign it to one of 3 categories: fixed, flexible, or discretionary. By fixed expense, I mean any recurring expense you must make, where it's the same amount every month. A flexible expense is also something that you can't get along without, but which has fluctuating costs each month. Discretionary expenses are things that are not needs. These are usually the fun things we like to buy or do. This chart is another way to help you understand these categories a little better. I'll also give some examples of items in each category. We can divide these expenses 2 ways. On the top, it tells us if the item is a necessity. On the left side, it tells us if the payments for the items remain the same month to month. Expenses that we need to make, which are generally the same every month, are fixed expenses. Some common fixed expenses include things like your rent or mortgage payments, insurance payments, and loan payments. Fixed expenses are usually pretty easy to predict and plan for. Expenses that we need to make, which might have a different total each month, are flexible expenses. This would include things like the electricity bill, the water bill, and groceries. These can be more difficult to predict. Expenses that are not strictly speaking necessary are discretionary expenses. There are 2 types of these non-vital purchases. The first type of discretionary expense has consistent monthly payments. These are things like cable, magazines, or other subscriptions. The other type of discretionary expense has varying monthly amounts. This may include things like going out to eat, electronics, big vacations, or jewelry. It's easy to get in trouble financially if we begin to treat things in the not a need column as though they were in the need column. Be sure to recognize what's a genuine need and what's really just a discretionary want. So now that we know how to divide our expenses, let's talk about the next step in the process: reducing. There are several strategies that help reduce the amount of money we're spending each month. The reason we divided our expenses into 3 categories is because it makes it easier to see which items we can or can't reduce easily. Although it's possible to reduce fixed expenses, it involves really big steps like changing your place of residence. You can decide whether you need to do that, but we're going to focus on simpler things you could do in the immediate future. Flexible spending, those necessary but inconsistent expenses, are simple to reduce, even if it's just in small ways. It mostly involves breaking old habits and creating new habits. Ask yourself questions like, where can I get this item cheaper? Can I buy a generic brand? Can I buy it used? Can I make it myself? Can I consume less electricity by turning off the lights? Is it cheaper if I buy this food in bulk and store some of it in the freezer? Over time, those small changes can add up to big savings. One thing that my wife and I have found helpful so that we don't go over our budget for, let's say, groceries, is to only carry the allotted amount in cash. That way it's easier to be aware of how much we've spent and how much we have left. Once the cash is gone, we make do with what food we already have in the house. For discretionary expenses, the easiest way to determine if it really is a want or a need is to ask myself one simple question: can I survive without this? I think about that fun gadget I've been wanting. I ask myself if I can absolutely live without it for the rest of the day and maybe tomorrow too. If the answer is yes, then I ask myself if I could possibly live without it for another week or 2, or month or 2. Doing this makes it very easy to distinguish between my wants and needs. Cutting these expenses can be very hard to do sometimes, but it's worth it. One thing that makes it bearable is to set aside a small amount of discretionary money every month as your mad money. Say $5, which you can use to indulge in whatever you want. And if you don't spend it that month, it carries over to the next month. It's a little easier to tighten your belt when you know you can still make a fun purchase once in a while if you just wait a few months and save up your mad money. It adds up soon enough and makes you extra grateful when you do eventually go wild and buy that fun thing. It encourages a mentality of save now, buy later, instead of buy now, pay later. Reducing your expenses is a great way to learn new skills and learn from people who have mastered techniques of frugality. And it's easier to do when you start by categorizing your expenses. So grab the reins and take control of your spending habits. Why? Because you managing your money is better than letting your money manage you.